Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again, this time for a review of the Roto Grip Idle Helios. Get yours at your local pro shop or come see me at Millennium Bowling Supply to pick yours up November 19th. Looking at the core dynamics coming up, this is the exact same idle core that was featured in the last 4 idle bowling balls that Roto Grips released. I did drill this one on a taller pin layout, so it's a 5.5 inch pin to PAP but only a 1 inch pin buffer. That gets the pin really high up above my fingers. This type of layout on a larger diff symmetrical ball tends to give me a lot more shape down the lane, and with my lower axis tilt that helps me carry. Now in the interest of full disclosure, I did not have a magenta idle, the original, but I have had the last 3, the Pearl, the Pro, and the Synergy. For those of you that think that this is an Idle Pro reboot because it's supposed to be a cleaner solid, that couldn't be further from the truth. This cover overall is a lot stronger than the Idle Pro cover, which was E-Track solid. This is Extreme Track solid, which is likely a stronger formulation using E-Tracks as a base. And that's exactly what I see out of this ball. It's pretty strong, but it's not crazy strong the way that the Zen Master is. In the realm of symmetric solids, the Zen Master is the absolute top. It's the earliest, it's the strongest, and for me it's actually the smoothest or slowest off the spot. So it gives me a lot of control, but demands quite a bit of oil. The Helios gets quite a bit further down the lane. As you'll see, it's fairly clean for being a solid ball on paper, but it's not phase 2 clean for me, so it sort of fits in between the phase 2 and the Zen Master. This isn't really a gap that I had given much thought to. If I needed an earlier phase 2, I would just put some surface on one that I had in my bag. But this actually gives me quite a bit more in the mid lane, and it's a little bit smoother. The phase 2 is so popular because it's a solid symmetric ball that picks up in the mid lane the way that it's supposed to, but it's particularly continuous down the lane and gets through the pins pretty quick. So that makes it really unique. Traditionally, the Idle series has rolled a little bit heavier for me. This ball is no exception, except it's a solid cover that actually can handle some oil. The Pro was not that. It was a shiny solid cover, so it was great for blending out the wet-dry when there was some defined friction to throw to. This is going to be a lot better on some higher volume stuff whenever there's some oil, and something like an Idle Pro or even a phase 2 is having some trouble picking up. If a Reality or a Proton Physics are too strong, this is going to be probably the next ball that I reach for. And then if this is too strong, I would go to like an IQ Tour Solid. If there is some oil out on the lane, this is going to be one of the first ones that I kind of give a look to and see if I'm going to be able to get it to go through the pins the right way. At this particular center where I bowl league, it does go through the pins really nice as long as I keep my angles a little straighter. I get a little steep with a couple shots, and you can see it usually hits light and kind of struggles to get back. This center tends to exaggerate that particular characteristic out of bowling balls that are smoother. And while a smooth ball isn't necessarily something that I would reach for league more often than not in this bowling center, this ball actually would be pretty good in league because it's still fairly quick down the lane and wants to go through the pins. I can keep it in the oil and it still sees it, but it doesn't hit flat. A little bit of that is going to be due to the taller pin layout. I like to drill some of these more tumbly cores on a taller pin because I can sort of get that little extra kick down lane that makes them a lot more usable on more conditions for me. And if I need to slow down the friction response, I can always cut my axis rotation down a little bit. I decided to compare this ball to the phase 2 because they are so similar and could almost fill the same spot in a bag depending on the characteristics of the pattern that you're bowling on or the lane surface that you're bowling on. If you needed something a little bit quicker, I would go with the phase 2. If you had a center or a pattern that the back ends were a little bit quicker, I would probably lean towards the Helios because I could control them a little bit better. In the comparison, you'll really get an idea of how much earlier the Idle Helios is than the phase 2. The phase 2 and the Idle Pro were sort of on top of each other for me, but the Idle Pro didn't hit as well, so it tended to get bumped out by the phase 2. There's a lot more separation here between the Helios and the phase 2 because the Helios cover is a fair bit stronger. The phase 2 is so good for me because it shines when I move in and I don't have to shell down. I'm going to kind of scooch left here as I keep going with the comparison so you can see the subtle shape differences between the two balls, even though I can play them pretty much on top of each other. I like that this fits above the phase 2 because I have the Idle Synergy below the phase 2 if I'm really matched up with a phase 2 and I need something just a touch cleaner. So if I can start with a Helios, go to a phase 2, and then go to a Synergy, that gives me a really nice progression that would last for like 8 or 10 games. The phase 2 in this video is 5 by 3 by 3, so the pin is right above my middle finger. It's not super tall the way that the Helios is. And I did actually add a little bit of fresh surface to the phase 2 to bring them a little bit closer for the comparison part of this video. These next couple of shots are pretty far left, and it'll give you a really good idea of why I like the phase 2 so much and why I think the Idle Helios is a great complement and will still be something that's super usable ahead of the phase 2 on a little bit more oil. Some final thoughts: the Idle Helios is a great one ball as far as symmetric solids go. For me, it's going to be a little bit more usable than a Zen Master, and probably be able to handle a little bit more oil than the Phase 2. If my proton physics and my reality are both a little too much or a little too lazy down the lane, this is going to be the next one that I try if Pearl stuff isn't in play yet. As far as the eye test goes, this ball feels a lot closer to the Magenta Idle than the Idle Pro for me. Like I said, I've not thrown a Magenta Idle, but I've seen a bunch of them go down the lane. And this looks really close to me. It's a touch cleaner and a touch more down the lane, which in my opinion actually makes the ball a bit more usable for folks that roll it a little heavier and aren't necessarily around it a whole bunch. Once again, you can pick up your Idle Helios at your local pro shop worldwide on November 19th, or stop by and see me at Millennium Bowling Supply to get yours. If you like these videos and you want to see more, please like and subscribe. I do have an RSTX3 video out now as well. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.